In this video, I'm going to show you how to use if functions. Now here I have a list of the top 30 NHL scores from last season, and I'm going to compare penalty minutes against points. So I'm going to start with an if formula, and how an if formula works is you set up a test, assign a value if it's true, and assign a value if it's false. So I'm going to look at if this player's penalty minutes were greater than their points, then I'm going to assign an X, otherwise I'm going to leave a blank. Now if I copy this all the way down, it's going to show me which players had more penalty minutes than points. And for those, an X shows up. And that's how an if function works. You can assign whatever values you want. I just used an X here and a blank, but it can be whatever you want. Now, a similar function you can use is the Countif function. And what that does is it'll count the number of times your criteria is met. So let's say I want to know how many players had more than 50 points. I'll select the points column, and for the criteria, select greater than 50. And it tells me 8 players had more than 50 points. Now, you can also do, on newer versions of Excel, the Countifs function, which allows multiple criteria. So let's say I wanted to know how many players had more than 50 points, but also played on the Tampa Bay Lightning. So if I do another comma, I can do another criteria. So here I'm going to select the team column and select TBL. Now, if I wanted to, I could do a comma and keep going with the criteria, but I'm going to leave it at this. So it tells me 2 players had more than 50 points and played on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Similar formula, average if. This will take an average of whatever meets my criteria. So let's say I wanted to know the average goals scored by Detroit players on this list. So I'm going to select the team again, set it to DET, and the average range, this is what I want to average. So I want to average their goals. So it tells me of the Detroit players in their list, their average was 13 goals. Now, another formula is a sum if function, and this will do the same thing as an average if, except this time it'll just add everything. So again, let's say I want to look at total assists by Washington players. So I'll select the team again, select WSH, and then I want to add everything in the assist column. So it tells me total assists by Washington players in this list is 100. Now you can also use wildcards in your searches. And so I'm going to do a Countif formula, and this time I want to find all the players named Matt. So I'm going to select the player list, and for criteria this time, I'm going to put Matt's. Now, to do a wildcard, what I want to do is put an asterisk at the end of this. An asterisk represents a wildcard, meaning anything can come after this. Since I know the name has to start with Matt at the beginning, I'm going to put the asterisks at the end. And it tells me 2 players on this list have the name Matt. So I'll give you another example. So let's say I want to know how many times a team name shows up that starts with the letter D. So I'm going to select the team column. And similarly, because it starts with the letter D, I'm not going to use an asterisk here because I know it starts with D. But I'll use an asterisk afterwards. So it tells me 2 times a team name starts with D in this list. Now, what if the name ended with a D? Then what I would do is for the criteria, I would have the asterisks at the beginning because I'm saying anything can happen before, but the end has to be a D. And so it tells me no team names on this list end in D. Now, if I'm saying the D can be anywhere in the name, then what I'll do is select team column, and this time put an asterisk on both sides. And so that way, if there's something after, if there's something before, it doesn't matter. As long as D is in the name, then it'll be counted. In this case, it picks up an additional 1 because Edmonton had a D in the middle of its name. Now, another thing you can do is you can use wildcards for single characters. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I wanted to know how many players had an S in their last name, but their name was only 5 letters long. So I'll do the Countif function again. This time select the player range. And for criteria, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to start with an asterisk because I'm looking at their last name. So it's going to be what the name ends with. And then I'm going to do a space and then S followed by 4 question marks. And so how this works is I know that the last name is going to be preceded by a space. So that's why I have to put a space. So I'm saying anything can happen before this, but I'm looking for something that has a space, that ends in a space, S, and then should be a fourth one, and 4 characters after this. Now, the difference between using an asterisk and using a question mark in this case is an asterisk means there could be unlimited number of characters after it, and an asterisk can also be numbers. A question mark represents a character, so it can't be a number, and represents only one space. So by having an S and 4 question marks after it means it has to be only 4 other characters after the S. So what this means again is that anything can come at the beginning, but the ending has to end in a space, S, and 4 characters. And so that tells me that there are 3, which in this case is stall, Sedin, and Semin that meet that criteria. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use wildcards. Question marks if you're looking for single characters, but again, they don't work with numbers. Asterisks if you're looking for anything or any sort of range for or after or in between. And hope that helped. Thanks for watching.